Welcome back to my views on news. Some news stories for you. First one is about Eritrean military. New allegations of human rights abuses against Eritrean military are being shared. Washington Post has published an article. It has published some satellite images too. It claims that hundreds of Tigrayans were massacred by Eritrean military in October and November last year. This is second report from Washington Post about alleged massacres committed by Eritrean military in Tigray. Did ENDF commit no massacre in Tigray? We'll try to analyze this report of Washington Post. Is it credible? What is the basis for this report? Is satellite images sufficient to say that Eritrean military killed civilians? Because we know that people died in Tigray war. Some say 500,000 people died. Where were they buried? Secondly, an update for you on the announced visit of Abune Mathias, the Patriarch, who is expected to visit Tigray. Will he now visit Tigray when one Tigray archbishop has rejected the apology made by the church yesterday? And what about the appointments of bishops? I think 9 bishops were appointed 2 days ago to Oromia. Is he on board? Thirdly, viewers, Shaggar city is being constructed, we know, around Addis Ababa, Ethiopian capital. And now, Shaggar city diocese is also going to be established. A separate diocese for only Shaggar city. Who will be head of this diocese? Last, viewers, I have a video for you showing Fano fighters in prison. While we know that Fano fighters are now fighting Ethiopian National Defense Force, Amhara forces in different parts of the Amhara region these days. But we must not forget that since last year, arrests of Fano fighters have been ongoing. Hundreds have been arrested who are still in prisons. Then Fano decided to reorganize itself. A video from a prison which is very close to Eritrean border to hundreds of Fano fighters are there in very miserable conditions reported. Firstly, was fresh allegations of human rights abuses, of war crimes allegedly committed by Eritrean military. In the 2-year-long war in northern Ethiopia, we have seen several reports published by international news outlets about massacres committed in Tigray, Amhara and Afar regions of Ethiopia. Second report from Washington Post accusing Eritrean military. Washington Post published a report in March. Now, second report about the involvement of Eritrean military allegedly in a massacre. Washington Post, 2 writers for Washington Post have written this article. Meg Kelly and Catherine Horrelt. Both ladies say that they have analyzed more than 24 satellite images. They received images, they shared the images with experts, they contacted people, they interviewed witnesses, and after consulting experts, analysts and witnesses, they compiled this report. The writers claim that at the end of October, on the 25th of October, Eritrean soldiers entered a village close to Adwa. in Tigray. Mariam Shavito is the name of the village, around 40 kilometers away, I think, from Adwa is this village situated. And from the 25th of October, in the next 1 to 2 weeks, Eritrean military committed massacre of civilians allegedly in Mariam, Shavito and nearby villages. 300 were massacred in that 2-week long period. People fled villages, they fled to forests. When massacre was being committed, later they returned and they buried people, those who had been killed by Eritrean military, close to Mariam Shavito church and Abune Libano church. And later Washington Post received information. It contacted Planet Lab, it contacted Maqsad Technology. It received satellite images. Satellite images show burial places, or they show changes on the ground in terms of greenery, in terms of elevation of the ground. Based on these satellite images, Washington Post claims that mass graves are existing near Adwa, in Mariam Shavito and nearby villages. The mass graves show allegedly those who were killed at the hands of Eritrean military. Now, a few questions. Firstly, why is that Washington Post does not find any involvement of Ethiopian National Defense Force in human rights abuses committed in Tigray? After Pretoria deal, I have not seen reporting from Washington Post about involvement of Ethiopian forces in war crimes in Tigray. Why is that just Eritrean military is being singled out? Operations were conducted jointly by Eritrean military and Ethiopian National Defense Force. They were not working separately, reportedly, the two sides. Secondly, 500,000 people died in the 2-year-long war in Tigray. Where were they buried? Obviously, in Tigray, Amhara, Afar regions. You could find dozens of mass graves. You can find in Amhara, Afar, and Tigray. How to differentiate between civilians killed and fighters killed? Because I have covered this war since the start, I saw that most of the massacres committed in Tigray, Amhara, Afar regions were basically revenge attacks. For example, residents of a village were involved in attack on Tigray forces, Eritrean military or Amhara forces. In retaliation, then these forces carried out attacks on a village and all the young men there were massacred. It happened. Most were revenge attacks. People say that in China, Tigray fighters committed a massacre. That was a revenge attack. Aksum massacre, reportedly revenge attack. So what happened in Mariam Shavito? Why did just Eritrean military kill the people? No reasoning, no justification shared by Washington Post. And secondly, does Washington Post have any evidence to say that the killed are civilians, not Tigray fighters? So that is why just sharing satellite images to claim that civilians were massacred, not armed men, just to put pressure upon Eritrean military, it's unfair, I think. I am not denying that civilians, I'm not saying civilians were not killed. But at such a level, an international level, if you are publishing such a report, you should share all the facts. You cannot just single out Eritrean military. The Eritrean military committed atrocities in Tigray and ENDF was not there. ENDF was not aware of these massacres. No, ENDF was there. All operations were joint operations. I think there's a pattern. After Pretoria deal, now we're seeing reports about war crimes committed by Eritrean military. So pattern is visible that attempt is being made to put pressure upon Eritrean military to take Eritrean military, Eritrean rulers to international criminal court maybe. That is why this investigation into human rights abuses during Tigray war is still pending. Purpose is to take Eritrea to international criminal court. Obviously, ENDF is not target. It's not the target of Western news outlets now because ENDF and Tigray forces, Tigray players, they have signed a peace deal. Eritrea is now being targeted by international media, it seems. Having said that, yes, international inquiry should be conducted. That is how you can establish if massacres were committed or not. And then even in inquiry, it's difficult. I mean, how will the investigating officer reach a conclusion that the killed people were actually just civilians, not fighters? Were the killed people elderly? Were they women? Were they children? Or were they just young men? If an entire village has been massacred, it means that children would have been massacred, would have been killed too, elderly too, women too. That is what should be investigated. A large-scale massacre involves all segments of society, not just youth. Investigation should be conducted with participation of Eritrean government as well. Otherwise, the Eritrean government will not accept the result of the inquiry. Secondly, viewers, Patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, Abune Mathias, was due to visit Tigray. Before that, an apology was issued by Ethiopian Orthodox Church saying that it regrets that it could not stop the war in Tigray. It should have been in Tigray. Apology was rejected by one of the archbishops from Tigray last night. So will now the Patriarch visit Tigray or will the visit be postponed? And secondly, is the Patriarch Abune Mathias on board regarding appointment of bishops to Oromia? Because we know that I think to 7 dioceses of Oromia, 7 or 6, new bishops are going to be appointed. Appointment has been approved by the Holy Synod. And then we saw start of social media rumors that Abune Mathias was not on board. He was not willing to visit Tigray too. This morning came a clarification from church spokesperson. The Patriarch is going to visit Tigray. The visit has not been cancelled so far. Patriarch is not opposing the appointments approved by the Synod 2 to 3 days ago to Oromia and other parts of Ethiopia. So several social media rumors being spread. Church spokesperson says that the Patriarch Abune Mathias is fully on board when it comes to recent appointments of bishops to Oromia and other parts of Ethiopia. Thirdly, viewers, Shaggar city is being established, we know, around Addis Ababa. The city, newly constructed, under construction city, is going to surround Addis Ababa. This project is being opposed by some groups in the Amhara region. They say that Oromia government basically wants to control Addis Ababa. That is why it has launched a project to engulf Addis Ababa. And we have seen controversy over demolition of houses, churches, mosques in Shaggar city. But PM Abiy yesterday took a very strong position. He said illegal constructions will not be tolerated. all illegally built buildings will be demolished, no matter what happens. Now, Shaggar is going to have a separate diocese, just like Addis Ababa has a separate diocese. The diocese will be led by an archbishop who was top archbishop when this archbishop and others tried to form a breakaway faction in Oromia. And they appointed some 26 bishops to the different parts of Oromia. But that appointment led to start of a confrontation within the church between the main church led by the Patriarch and the breakaway faction. The breakaway faction was led by Abune Mathias. We saw that his title was revoked. His title and Abune was Tautius Abune Morkos. Titles of the three archbishops were revoked. Later, the two sides reconciled. Now, Abune Mathias has been appointed as the head of Shaggar diocese. Obviously, this appointment came with the approval of Oromia regional government. Oromia government wants this diocese to be led by Abune Mathias. Now, it seems that church cannot make decisions without keeping in view sensitivities of groups in Oromia or concerns of the groups in Oromia. Oromia government is also emerging as a player. Reportedly, Oromia government backed the appointment of Abune Mathias to the diocese in Shaggar. Church respected that, or church approved that, and Mathias is now going to lead this diocese in Shaggar city. Last viewers, a video clip for you, short video clip for you from afar. In Afar, there is Sula military camp. Around 40 kilometers away from Eritrean border is this military camp. Hundreds of Fano fighters are imprisoned there. More than a year ago, these Fano fighters were arrested from different parts of the Amhara region. Since then, they have been in prisons at different camps. Some were released, but majority of them still in prison. Majority of them still at this camp. There are several other camps, prisons too, where Fano fighters, commanders are suffering. And no legal proceedings initiated. Did they commit any crime? So why are they in prisons? Any legal case pending against them? Any charges filed against them? Reportedly, hundreds are being kept in prisons without any legal proceedings. This is alarming. Same is happening in the case of OLF leaders, workers of OLF, Kiros. That to dismantle Kiro movement, hundreds were arrested, thousands other, and some are still suffering in prisons. Courts granted bails, false cases were registered, some were acquitted by the courts. Even after acquittals, after bails granted, the people were not released from prisons in Oromia. Same is happening in Amhara. So last year, Ethiopian government launched a campaign to disarm, to disband Fano fighters. Thousands were arrested, and this year things changed. Things changed when Fano fighters decided to reorganize themselves. They got a little bit of leadership too. Skandar Naga emerged. Amhara Special Force members joined them. People opposed disbandment of special forces, and then we saw that some ENDF members joined too. Some colonels of Ethiopian National Defense Force joining them. So that is how they managed to reorganize themselves. And now they are fighting in different parts of the Amhara region. Why? Because last year's campaign of disarmament, disbandment was launched suddenly by Ethiopian federal government, Amhara regional government, Fano factions which were fighting back then against Tigray fighters. They felt that they had been betrayed. This betrayal, sense of betrayal, led to start of efforts for reorganization. Still, things can be solved. Issues can be solved through dialogue, through mediation. I think imprisonment of Fano fighters, Oromo chaos is not solution to the unrest in Amhara, Oromia regions of Ethiopia. And in most cases, they are innocent. They have not committed any crime. Just because they were Fano fighters, members of Fano factions, members of Olaf, they were arrested, in prison, suffering. Thanks for watching. Watch the video from Sola military camp of Ethiopian National Defense Force, very close to Eritrean border. It's in a far region of Ethiopia. Fano fighters suffering there. You can see miserable conditions. How are they surviving there? Thanks for watching.